Welcome to Taiwan, Asia's most underrated but most up-and-coming tourist destination. In this video I'm going to take you around Taiwan on a typical holiday that I recommend to most first-time visitors. It could take anything from around 10 days to a month, but if you have only a few days in the country then I suggest basing yourself in Taipei with overnight trips to Jiufen and perhaps Jiaoxi or Taroko Gorge, which we'll get to later in the video. Starting with the capital, I break Taipei up into 3 itineraries based on the subway lines. The first itinerary starts in the old Japanese administrative district in central Taipei. It includes the 2-to-8 Peace Memorial Park, the adjacent National Taiwan Museum, the Presidential Office Building, and the controversial memorial to Taiwan's one-time dictator Chiang Kai-shek. Also nearby is Ximending, the youth culture and fashion hub of the nation. This itinerary then continues on to attractions south of the city, including the beautiful Bitan Lake, and it finishes in Wulai, the closest Aboriginal village to Taipei, which is also famous for hot springs. Besides easy public transport, I group these together because they're all best visited during the weekend. The second Taipei itinerary is a culture and history tour of northern Taipei. It's the longest itinerary and it could be easily spread over 2 days. It starts with the National Palace Museum, which exhibits many of China's most important treasures. They were rescued, or stolen, depending on who you ask, by Chiang Kai-shek's Chinese Nationalist Party before it lost China to the communists and fled to Taiwan after World War II. After a couple of historic temples and a possible hike up Yangmingshan, Taipei's mountain, the next stop is the hot spring resort town of Beitou. People come here to enjoy a public or private hot spring bath, and to visit the Beitou Hot Springs Museum, which in its day was the largest public bathhouse in the Japanese Empire. This itinerary finishes at the historic port of Dunshui, where people come to enjoy fresh sea air, an old Spanish fort, and to try to catch the famous but very elusive Dunshui sunset. The final itinerary, Eastern Taipei, is modern Taipei. This is where people come to shop and to dine. It's home to Taipei 101, a lot of shopping malls, and 2 famous arts and cultural centres located inside repurposed Japanese-era factories. You could spend anything from an hour to a day or more in Eastern Taipei, but I suggest planning around where you'd like to be for sunset. The cliché option is of course to go up Taipei 101 and watch the sunset over the city from the 89th floor. The views are spectacular. Another option is to watch the sunset over the city from Maokong, which you can reach via the Maokong gondola. A less commercial option is to climb Shangshan, or Elephant Mountain, and watch the sunset over Taipei with Taipei 101 in the picture. This is where virtually all Taipei cityscape photos are taken from. Alternatively, you could go straight from Eastern Taipei to the historic Japanese mining town of Jiufen, which we'll get to next. Especially if you're going to leave Taipei for the evening, but even if you're not, I highly recommend having a big lunch at Fruitful Food, the city's top vegetarian buffet. It's not cheap, but it offers an incredible gourmet dining experience and is a culinary highlight of a trip to Taiwan for many people, both vegetarian and non-vegetarian. It's usually possible to just turn up for a weekday lunch, but dinner usually requires reservations well in advance. Jiufen is the most popular overnight escape from Taipei, and the first stop on a round the island tour for many tourists. The town is at its best during the evening when you can explore its quaint old streets and watch the sunset over the coast from one of its famous tea houses. In its heyday, Jiufen was an entertainment district for local miners. It first became famous as the setting of the 1989 Taiwanese historical movie A City of Sadness, which was the first film to look at Taiwan's tragic martial law era under Chiang Kai-shek. It then springboarded to international fame, at least in Asia, when it became suggested, albeit with little evidence, that it inspired the bathhouse in the town of Hayao Miyazaki's famous 2001 animated movie Spirited Away, which outsold Titanic. There are several ways to get to Jiufen from Taipei, but the most convenient way is usually to take bus 1062 from outside the Zhongshaofushan MRT station, exit 2. Don't be fooled by the aggressive taxi touts who promise a faster journey on the expressway. Buses and taxis all take the expressway to the nearby city of Ruifang and then drive up the same busy mountain road to Jiufen. The bus trip takes about 1 hour and 15 minutes and costs 135 NT. Please be sure to have an easy card or coins ready. 10 minutes by bus further up the road is the neighbouring town of Jinguashi, whose gold and copper mining centre has been converted into an attractive ecological park. It features some of the best preserved Japanese buildings outside of Japan, some awe-inspiring dystopian industrial ruins, and a famous golden waterfall, so named because dissolved minerals in the water actually do give it a golden hue. On a less positive note, the town is also known by its Japanese name, Kinkaseki, for its World War II prisoner of war camp, where captured Allied soldiers were forced to work in gruelling conditions deep in the mines. The Gold Park can be explored in a couple of hours, but to visit all other sites in Jinguashi requires about half a day and a lot of walking. Fortunately, the local government is currently connecting up the various attractions with pleasant walkways, saving travellers from walking on the narrow and often dangerous mountain roads. Jinguashi is definitely worth a side trip from Jiufen, but I recommend staying the night in Jiufen because there's more to see, do and eat there in the evening. I suggest getting up early the next morning and walking down the Xiaokuking ancient footpath, my favourite short hike in Taiwan, which follows an historic trail past the ruins of a once prosperous mining village to the former coal mining town of Houtong. While it has some interesting coal mining history, Houtong is most famous for its many domesticated cats which tourists come to feed. If you're vegetarian or vegan and still want to feed the cats, you can purchase vegan pet food from the Guangfu Loving Hut near Taipei 101. If you'd like to feed yourself while you're there, it offers incredible vegan versions of hot pots, a traditional Northeast Asian cuisine. Unlike Jiufen and Jinguashi, Houtong has a train station and it's conveniently located along the historic Pingshi Small Railway line, which was built to haul coal out of Houtong, but is now mostly used for tourism. So I suggest exploring the Pingshi line from Houtong. Then it's possible to either continue on around the island, which is how I'll be presenting it in this video, or to return to Taipei. Alternatively, the Pingshi Railway can easily be explored as a separate day trip from Taipei. While Jiufen and Jinguashi have become padded tourist destinations, the towns along the Pingshi Railway are much more rough and ready, and some feature old abandoned mining sites which can be interesting to explore, but please be careful. Most tourists, however, come to set off the famous sky lanterns from Jiufen and Pingshi stations, although I don't recommend this out of environmental concerns. It looks like fun at the time, but it's really just sending a ball of flames into the atmosphere in the surrounding forest. I do, however, recommend the half-hour walk to the Jiufen waterfall, the widest waterfall in the country, but please don't be fooled by the electric scooter shop outside the station which tells you that the falls are 5 minutes away by scooter or an hour's walk. You'll ride the scooter for 5 minutes before you need to park it, and then you'll still need to join the other tourists on the interesting walk along a river and railway line to the falls anyway. Please be aware that the waterfall park closes at 4:30. After exploring the Pingshi railway line, you'll need to double back to Sandiaoling, Houtong or Weifeng station to transfer to the main Taiwan Railways line. If you continue on around the island with me, then Sandiaoling station is the closest, and if you're returning to Taipei, it usually doesn't make any difference which station you transfer at. Either way, you could transfer at Houtong if you like the company of cats while you wait, or alternatively, Weifeng station is famous for its night market, which includes a vegetarian stall. If your goal return to Jiufen next, then it's best to take the Pingshi Railway back to Weifeng station and then transfer to bus 1062 or bus 788 up to Jiufen. About an hour southeast of Houtong is the hot spring resort town of Jiaoxi. Besides hot springs, and like Jiufen, Jiaoxi is also famous for its beautiful waterfalls. The nearby city of Yilan doesn't have a lot to see or do, but it has a great vibe and it's my favourite small Taiwanese city. It's well worth spending a night in Jiaoxi or Yilan on your way around the island. An hour further down the east coast by train is the sleepy city of Hualien. The fastest and most comfortable trains for this journey, or any journey, are the Taroko Express and Puma Express trains, but it's worth reserving a ticket on any train you can get. I plan to cover public transport in Taiwan in another video, but it's important to note that unlike most other trains, the Taroko and Puma trains can't be boarded without a reserved seat ticket. Please note also that the very popular high-speed rail doesn't go to Hualien or anywhere on the east coast. Hualien has long been treated by tourists as just a gateway to Taroko Gorge, which we'll get to next, but it's actually got some interesting Japanese history. Train fans must visit the Hualien Railway Cultural Park, a beautifully restored Japanese railway hub. Also nearby is Pine Garden, a former World War II command centre which was then taken over by Americans as a resort during the Cold War. In Hualien, I highly recommend staying at City Home, even if it's your most luxurious stay in Taiwan. If you book privately, you'll get a free vegan breakfast thrown in, but even if you're not vegan or vegetarian, I'm sure you'll enjoy the unique, stylish rooms which are excellent value, especially midweek. Speaking of the week, currently with the Wuhan pneumonia pandemic, anyone can go virtually anywhere in Taiwan at any time. But once the borders reopen to tourists, I don't recommend coming to Hualien or Taroko Gorge on weekends, public holidays, or especially the Lunar New Year. About an hour by bus north and slightly inland from Hualien is Taroko Gorge, Taiwan's top natural attraction. It's a must visit for anyone who appreciates the great outdoors, but it's only safe during fine weather. Bring hiking shoes or at least other sturdy footwear, wet weather gear, a torch that's a flashlight for Americans, and some cash for possible but unlikely emergencies. On that note, while the local government loans hard hats free of charge and makes every effort to ensure visitors' safety, a steep marble gorge isn't the safest place to be, so please consider the risks carefully before coming. I recommend that everyone, but especially vegetarians and vegans, stock up on food from the Hualien Loving Hut, which sells take-out meals that are perfect for the gorge. There's no shortage of taxis offering private tours, And City Home offers a daily group tour, which readers of my book have recommended. But personally, I enjoy the freedom and flexibility of public buses, which leave from the Orange station just outside Hualien train station. Please understand though that these are public buses, so it's important to have an easy card or lots of coins ready. And of course, be sure to know when the last bus back to Hualien is. I suggest not spending too long at the Eternal Spring Shrine, the first stop in the gorge, and instead moving quickly further inland, where it's more beautiful and where there are fewer tourists. If you have time, continue all the way to Tiansheng, the town at the top of the gorge, and spend the night there, either at the Catholic hostel or the Protestant church hostel, or splash for a night at the 5-star Silks Hotel.